Hi, Angelique here. Today I'm going to be talking about Sun and Scorpio and how we can understand it through the lens of mythology and elemental astrology. And if you're new here or this is the first time finding the video, I touch on and help teach astrology when it comes to our personality through the lens of psychology, how we can understand ourselves and our behavior through astrology. I've also started offering some classes and groups online, virtually, where you can either connect with other people or you can learn yourself as a student. So those are linked below. You can check that out if interested. But Sun and Scorpio, I love talking about this placement in Scorpio because it's so rich. There's so much going on. I find it easier to break it down into mythology first and going to talk about the sign. So we'll get into what it means with the sun in a little bit. But just what does Scorpio mean in terms of mythology, psychology, how that energy shows up. And Scorpio is interesting because the traditional ruler of Scorpio is Mars, and Mars is known as the god of war. But in recent discovery of Pluto, Scorpio now has a co ruler of Pluto and not just Mars. So I'm going to touch on a little bit of both because I do think it's great to go over the more traditional rulers as well because that helps us to understand the sign when we look at everything that it has to, and not just Pluto. But so the god of war, and especially in the context of Scorpio, this is going to give in more of an intensity and not as much of a quick, impatient quality that you would see in Aries because Mars rules the sign of Aries. But when we're looking at Scorpio, Scorpio quality has more of a fixed energy to it. It's not as impulsive, it's not trying to burn through things quickly. It's really the energy of Scorpio, especially when it's tied to Mars, is more about what can you connect with intensely? What can you surmount? What can you become victorious on? And to get that is to commit fully. Scorpio is a very, like I said, a fixed energy. So when Scorpio commits to something, this sign in any capacity, not just the sun, it really fully commits. And it can be intense and borderline obsessive. So that's where that Mars energy comes into play, I feel, is we're going to see it more in the context of the intensity of going after things and goals, and not so much of a more flippant, impulsive, just like quick. The what where Mars I feel like shows up equally in both Aries and Scorpio is this desire to win, this desire to be on top, to be independent, being a leader somewhat, but I really do feel like it's more doing something on your own and getting there on your own and going after it. But because Scorpio has that more subdued, slower pace to it, but a very intense. It's a fire that burns longer and not as quick. And so when we bring in Pluto into this energy, Pluto is the god of the underworld. He is known there's some conflicting things out there because Pluto used to be known as Hades, but I'm going to use Pluto now as the god of the underworld. And Pluto, what we know from mythology is most of the texts don't talk about him even really having kids. And when he is committed to a person, a wife, he's committed forever. Doesn't is monogamous. Pluto is a monogamous person. What once Pluto goes after what it wants and gets it, it never wants to leave. So that's where that possessive, obsessive quality can come from with Scorpio. And this isn't just people. Actually, it gets trickier when we're talking about people because they're people uh, shouldn't be possessed that way, but it's a very intense energy. So when we're bringing in Mars and Pluto in the sign of Scorpio, anywhere you see Scorpio in your chart, or and we're talking about transits, anything like that, it's going to bring this need to commit to something, this need to delve deep, to uncover things, but also there's this intense transformation that takes place because Pluto is known as the god of the underworld. And so when we go to the underworld, it's usually related to our death, and it's underneath, it's hidden. So it's something that brings profound change. And so this is kind of an interesting uh, mythological background to have for the sign because Scorpio is a water sign. Essentially, it's water, it's fluid, but also deep, and there's an intuitive, hidden, mysterious quality to Scorpio, which is why I think Pluto joining Mars for Scorpio makes sense because Scorpio has a water element. And what we know about water, especially when it comes to astrology, is it has more of that flowing, intuitive quality about it. Like it likes to move through things at a slower pace, a more peaceful pace, but water also runs deep, as we know. So a lot of things can be hidden in water. A lot of things or people might not know what to expect when they get into water. And that's the water component of Scorpio that I attach to it, is the more hidden quality of water. Water can be very destructive when it gets very big and intense. And that is where Scorpio, I think, lines up the best, is that it can be still and hidden, but all of a sudden it might completely sweep you away. So when we're thinking about the sun in the place of the natal chart, the sun is going to illuminate a part of your chart, or it's going to give the energy to the person, their part of the personality that's going to shine the brightest, is going to attract the most power, attract the most um, just like attention, because the sun is going to grow and be big and bright. So it's an interesting energy. It can go well, but it can also um, be kind of hard to figure out because the sun is so bright and passionate, and Scorpio has that fiery energy, but it also has this hidden, deeper, intuitive, almost psychic quality to Scorpio as well. So when we think of Sun and Scorpio, I really understand it as an energy that attracts a lot of attention and power through transformation, things that are deep, things that are hidden, things that are more mysterious. And how that can show up is a lot of people who have Sun in Scorpio, whatever they tend to do, especially if it attracts fame or notoriety, there's some kind of intensity about it, or there's something about it that involves things that are unexplained, things are mysterious. I think of a lot of counselors and psychologists, especially, have Sun in Scorpio. Anything that involves research, this is because you're uncovering things, bringing things to light, bringing in deep transformation for yourself or other people. So not only you might transform deeply throughout your life and get a lot of attention for it, but you can help bring this about in other people. or if people have gone through a significant transformation, you're there helping them. So we have a lot of therapists, counselors, psychologists, researchers, like I said, especially anything involving taboo or things that are more hidden in society. And that's going to depend on where you grew up, your society, and your cultural heritage. But for an example, me, I grew up in the United States. So something that's pretty taboo and day to day, even still, is sex and death. Those are two of the biggest things. And Scorpio naturally is drawn to those topics, especially sex and death, because there's a lot of transformation that happens when we engage in those. So this could be working in those fields too, sex work. This can also be working in funeral homes, working with death, embalming. But also this can represent things in society that are maybe hidden and just we don't know about it, mysteries. So I'm thinking aliens, interdimensional things, time travel. These are different beings, ghosts, whatever, what have you. So you have this placement at Sun and Scorpio. If whatever you are interested about, if there's a hidden quality or a taboo nature to it, or something about it that is maybe misaligned in your society or culture, that could be something that you could really do well in and shine in and help other people grow and help yourself grow too, leaning into that. So the sign of Scorpio can get, I'll say, tricky for some people because of this hidden or taboo nature that can come with it. Wealth is another thing that I don't think is talked about enough with Scorpio. And a lot of that relates to the mythology, and that the earlier depiction of Pluto was about uncovering bounty from the earth to become prosperous. So that's why when we get further into like the eighth house in the house system astrology, wealth is found there too. So having to bring bounty, but going somewhere deeper or maybe doing something more hidden can bring about wealth, power, confidence. So there's an intensity to Scorpio, especially in the sun position. So you might be someone that is just able to be very intense in society, or you maybe are very intense with yourself and your persona, your schedule. There's just something about you, and you might like to be more hidden away or do things on your own. And that all relates to the sign of Scorpio. So I would lean into that. Um, but that's a power. That's something that you are probably naturally good at, is doing any of those avenues we talked about. Okay, so that was talk on understanding the Sun of Scorpio. If you have this placement and you like to share how this shows up for you, I'd be very curious. Otherwise, thank you again so much for listening and enjoy the rest of your day. Bye bye.